Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're diving into heart-centered living with Aaron Abke and his YouTube video, The Heart's Way is Better.
Okay.
We're going to unpack his ideas about prioritizing the heart over the mind.
Sounds good.
Not in a fluffy way,
Right.
but as a powerful approach to life and even accelerating your spiritual growth.
You know what's so compelling about Abke's approach?
Hmm.
He doesn't dismiss the mind altogether.
Right.
Instead, he encourages us to see the mind's place operating under the heart's jurisdiction.
Interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
So instead of this constant head versus heart battle,
Exactly.
we're aiming for some sort of heart-mind harmony.
Precisely. He calls this heart-mind coherence, or the I am state.
Okay.
And it's not just some feel-good concept. There's real science behind it.
Oh, wow.
Studies show this state of coherence can actually enhance our cognitive function,
Really?
boost our immune system, and
Okay.
even improve our relationships.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
I need you to break that down a bit further. How does simply aligning the mind with the heart lead to those benefits?
Well, think about it.
Okay.
When your mind and heart are in sync,
Mhm.
you're less likely to be ruled by fear, anxiety, and all those negative thought patterns.
Yeah,
Instead, you're operating from a place of clarity, purpose, and love.
I see.
That shift in internal energy ripples outward,
Okay.
impacting every area of your life.
So it's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this brings us to one of Abke's most intriguing points.
Okay.
The idea that the heart is actually more intelligent than the mind.
Okay, that might sound a bit counterintuitive
Yeah.
at first, but I'm listening.
Abke uses a really relatable example.
Okay.
Imagine someone coming to you with a complaint,
Uh,
maybe a coworker criticizing your work,
Yeah.
or a friend venting about their problems.
mhm.
Our knee-jerk reaction,
Yeah.
especially if we're operating from the mind's ego, is
Uh.
to get defensive.
Oh, absolutely. I can feel my defenses going up just thinking about it.
Right. But Abke suggests if we can pause and tap into the heart's intelligence, we can see beyond the surface level of those complaints.
Okay.
We can sense the underlying need for connection validation or just a listening ear.
So we're moving from a reactive state
Yes.
to a more responsive state.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where that heart-mind coherence becomes so powerful.
Okay.
When we're not caught up in the ego's need to be right,
Right.
we can actually listen with our hearts,
Mm-hmm.
see the situation from a compassionate perspective,
Yeah.
and respond in a way that meets the other person's needs.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
But how do we cultivate this heart-centered awareness?
Well, Abke is a big proponent of making devotion your sole spiritual practice.
Yep.
He calls it remembering love.
Okay.
He suggests practical things like setting hourly reminders,
Mm.
incorporating affirmations,
Mm.
and using challenging situations as an opportunity to ask yourself, how does love want to flow through me right now?
That sounds almost like training for an Olympic event. Except instead of physical strength,
Yes.
we're developing our capacity for love.
I love that analogy.
Thank
And yes, it does require that same level of dedication and commitment.
Right.
It's about consciously choosing love in every moment,
Okay.
even when it feels difficult.
But isn't that a bit unrealistic?
Well,
I mean, are we really supposed to feel love for that driver who just cut us off in traffic?
maybe not for their driving skills, no.
Right.
But you can choose love for your own ability to remain calm and centered
Oh, okay.
in the face of that frustration.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that we always have a choice
Okay.
in how we respond.
So it's about shifting our focus from what's happening externally
Exactly.
to how we're choosing to experience it internally.
Exactly. And Abke emphasizes,
Yeah.
as we commit to this practice of remembering love,
Okay.
something truly remarkable begins to happen.
What's that?
The ego starts to surrender.
Okay, so tell me more about this ego surrender.
Sure.
Is this like some epic battle?
Not quite. Okay.
Abke doesn't see it as a battle,
Okay.
but more like a gentle melting away of resistance.
I see.
He even uses this powerful quote,
Oh.
"Every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess that you alone are God,"
Hmm.
highlighting the irresistible power of love.
It's like love has this magnetic pull.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And that's where the concept of grace comes in.
Okay.
That divine power that seems to orchestrate things when we're aligned with love. It's like surrendering to love creates a vacuum that grace rushes in to fill.
Wow. That's powerful. But what if we stray from love, which, let's face it, we all do from time to time?
Well, Abke uses the parable of the prodigal son
Okay.
to describe how even when we wander from love, its memory will always call us back.
Okay.
It's like the heart has its own gravitational pull, gently drawing us back to our true nature.
This concept of the heart's gravity is really resonating with me.
Yeah,
It's almost like a built-in compass guiding us back home.
that's a beautiful way to describe it.
And speaking of guidance,
Yeah.
Abke also weaves in some wisdom from the Psalms to illustrate the beauty and abundance
Okay.
that flow from living from the heart.
Yes, he specifically mentions Psalms 1 and 103.
Yes.
Even reading a quote from Psalm 1, his passion is to remain true to the word of Apki. I am meditating day and night on the true revelation of light.
Those verses beautifully capture the essence of heart-centered living.
Yeah.
They speak to the deep peace of joy and unshakable strength that come from aligning with our true nature, which is love itself.
This is also incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea of making devotion my sole spiritual practice
Yeah.
feels a little daunting.
It can be a big shift.
Yeah.
And Abke acknowledges that. He
Oh.
actually uses a really vivid analogy to describe the process.
Okay.
He talks about allowing the heart to swallow you
Swallowed whole by the heart.
and lead you to a deeper dimension of being.
I'm intrigued, but also a little terrified.
He also talks about the mind resting on the white sands of love,
Okay.
illustrating the peace and ease that comes from surrendering to the heart.
Okay. I can see how that would be peaceful.
Right.
But what about the practical side of things? Like, how do we deal with those pesky negative thoughts that inevitably pop up?
Well, remember, Abke emphasizes that our job isn't to fight the ego,
Right.
but to remember love.
Okay.
We'll delve into the practical how-tos of remembering love and dealing with those pesky thoughts when we return for part 2 of our deep dive into the heart's way is better.
Okay. Sounds good. So we were talking about the heart swallowing you. That sounds both intense and intriguing. Is it really about letting go of the mind's control, completely like jumping into some unknown abyss?
It's not so much about obliterating the mind as it is about recognizing that it's not the ultimate authority in our lives. Think of it like this. You have this incredible, powerful car, which is your mind,
Okay.
but you've been driving it on autopilot for so long, just reacting to whatever comes your way. Abby's invitation is to switch off the autopilot and let the heart take the wheel.
Okay. I'm starting to get a better feel for this. But what does it look like to let the heart drive?
Right.
I mean, it's not like we can physically feel the heart making decisions, right?
It's more about learning to tune into the heart's subtle guidance. It speaks to us through our intuition, through feelings of peace expansion and rightness.
Okay.
It's that inner knowing that often gets drowned out by the mind's constant chatter.
So it's less about logic and analysis
Exactly.
and more about cultivating a sense of inner knowing.
Exactly. Think of it like developing a new sense. We're so accustomed to relying on our 5 senses, sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell.
Right.
But we also have this incredible inner sense that often gets neglected.
It's like we've been given this amazing sixth sense,
Right.
but haven't quite figured out how to use it yet.
Precisely. And the practice of devotion, of remembering love, is all about honing that 6th sense, that inner compass that points us toward what truly matters.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's get practical for a moment. What are some tangible ways we can start to cultivate this heart-centered awareness in our daily lives?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, simple practices like setting reminders, repeating affirmations, and using challenging situations as opportunities to remember love can be surprisingly effective. It's about consistently redirecting your attention back to the heart, like training a puppy to stay focused.
Right. It's about creating new neural pathways, new habits of being.
Yeah.
But what about when those negative thoughts come creeping in? Are we supposed to just ignore them or pretend they don't exist?
Not at all. The mind is a powerful tool, but it can also be a bit of a drama queen.
Oh, I know that drama queen all too well.
Right.
Sometimes it feels like my mind is running a constant loop of worst-case scenarios and anxious what-ifs.
The key is to not get hooked by those stories. Abke uses great analogy.
Okay.
He talks about the mind being like a wild horse. If you try to fight it directly, they'll just get trampled. But if you can gently guide it with a firm hand, you can eventually tame it.
So instead of trying to suppress those negative thoughts, we're learning to observe them without getting swept away by them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that thoughts are just thoughts. They don't have any inherent power over us unless we give it to them.
So we're developing a kind of mental detachment from those thoughts.
Yes, it's about creating a little space between ourselves and our thoughts so we can choose which ones to engage with and where ones to simply let pass by.
That reminds me of meditation,
Right.
learning to observe our thoughts without judgment.
That's a great connection. Meditation is a fantastic tool for cultivating this kind of detachment and strengthening our connection to the heart. It's like taking your wild horse to a training ground where you can practice those skills of gentle guidance.
But Abke also talks about heart-centered living impacting our effectiveness in the world. That seems counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Wouldn't spending all this time focused inward make us less productive or less engaged with what's happening around us?
It might seem that way on the surface, but think about what happens when you're constantly running on autopilot, driven by the mind's fears and anxieties.
Okay.
You're more likely to be reactive, to make decisions based on scarcity or fear, and to burn yourself out trying to control things that are ultimately outside your control.
So it's like we're spinning our wheels,
Exactly.
spending a lot of energy, but not really getting anywhere.
Exactly. But when you're operating from a heart-centered space, you tap into a deeper well of wisdom and creativity.
Okay.
You're more likely to be present, to listen intuitively, and to make decisions that align with your true purpose.
So instead of being driven by fear,
Yes.
we're guided by purpose.
Yes. And when you're aligned with your purpose, things tend to flow more effortlessly. Remember that concept of grace we discussed earlier?
Oh yeah, that divine power that seems to orchestrate things when we're in alignment with love.
Right. When you're operating from the heart, you become a magnet for grace. Things start to fall into place more easily. Opportunities present themselves, and you find yourself supported by a force that feels bigger than yourself.
But let's be real. There are going to be times when we fall back into old patterns.
Right.
What happens when we have those moments of weakness or forget to remember love?
That's completely normal. It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to have some wobbles and falls along the way.
Okay.
The key is to not beat ourselves up when we stumble,
Yeah.
but to simply acknowledge it, offer ourselves some compassion, and gently redirect our attention back to the heart.
So self-compassion is a key ingredient in this whole heart-centered living thing.
Absolutely. And remember, Abke emphasizes that our job isn't to fight the ego, but to remember love. It's about choosing love over and over again, even when it feels challenging.
Okay.
And that includes choosing love for ourselves when we make mistakes.
That's a powerful reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in self-criticism and judgment. But ultimately, that just perpetuates the cycle of negativity.
Exactly. And this is where Apoke's idea of surrendering to the heart, of letting it swallow you, becomes so liberating. When we finally let go of the need to control everything, to be perfect, to have all the answers, we open ourselves up to a whole new way of being.
I'm feeling a shift just thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like a weight being lifted, a sense of freedom and possibility opening up.
And that's just the beginning. As we delve deeper into the practice of heart-centered living, we start to experience even more profound shifts in our perception, our relationships, and our overall sense of well-being.
I'm ready to dive deeper.
Great.
But before we do,
Yeah.
can we come back to those Psalms Abke mentioned?
Absolutely.
I'm curious to explore how those verses connect to this idea of heart-centered living.
Absolutely. Those songs offer such a beautiful and poetic expression of the heart's wisdom, and we'll delve into their deeper meaning and relevance to your own journey when we return for the final part of our deep dive into The Heart's Way is Better.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to diving into those Psalms.
Okay.
But first, can we talk about the practicalities of integrating this heart-centered approach
Yeah.
into daily life?
Yeah.
I mean, I get the concepts,
Sure.
but how do I actually live this way
Right.
when I'm faced with real-world challenges, deadlines, and difficult people?
It's a great question because it's easy to get caught up in the beauty of these ideas and forget that putting them into practice is where the real transformation happens.
Right.
Abke reminds us that it's not about becoming some kind of spiritual superhero
Right.
who's immune to stress or negativity.
Yeah.
It's more about developing a new set of skills, a new way of responding to life's ups and downs.
So it's less about avoiding challenges
Exactly.
and more about navigating them from a different place, a
Yeah.
heart-centered place.
Exactly. Think of it like learning a new language.
Oh, yeah.
At first, it feels awkward and unfamiliar.
Right.
But with consistent practice,
Yeah.
it becomes more fluent.
Uh-huh.
The same goes for heart-centered living. It's about making those small conscious choices
Okay.
throughout the day to align with love, even when it feels challenging.
Can you give me some specific examples of what those small conscious choices
Absolutely.
might look like in everyday life?
Let's say you're dealing with a difficult coworker, someone who constantly pushes your buttons.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of getting sucked into their negativity, you can pause,
Okay.
take a breath, and ask yourself,
Yeah.
how can I respond to this situation with love?
Right.
It might mean setting a firm boundary,
Uh-huh.
communicating your needs clearly,
Yeah.
or even just choosing to detach emotionally from their drama.
So it's about responding, not reacting.
Precisely.
Taking that extra moment to choose a more heart-centered approach.
Precisely. And it might not always be easy, especially when you're feeling triggered or stressed.
Right.
But remember, every time you make that conscious choice to align with love, you're strengthening that heart-centered muscle. You're literally rewiring your brain to respond to life's challenges in a more compassionate and empowered way.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yeah.
It makes this whole process feel less overwhelming
Right.
and more like a series of small, manageable steps.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of those small steps.
Wow.
Over time, they create a ripple effect,
Uh-huh.
transforming not only your internal experience, but also your external reality.
Wow.
Remember that concept of grace we've been talking about?
Oh, yeah. The idea that surrendering to love creates a vacuum that grace rushes in to fill.
Right. When you consistently choose love, you're essentially opening yourself up to that flow of grace.
Yep.
Things start to fall into place more easily, opportunities present themselves, and you experience a sense of synchronicity and support that can feel almost magical.
Okay, now that's starting to sound a bit too good to be true.
Well,
Are you saying that simply by focusing on love,
right.
we can manifest all our desires and live happily ever after?
I wouldn't say it's about manifesting specific outcomes or achieving some kind of perfect problem-free existence.
Okay.
Life is always going to have its challenges,
Right.
but when you're operating from a heart-centered space,
Yeah.
you're better equipped to navigate those challenges with resilience, grace, and a deep sense of inner peace.
So it's more about changing our relationship to challenges rather than trying to eliminate them altogether.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that challenges are an inherent part of the human experience.
Right.
And that they often present opportunities for growth learning and even deeper connection with ourselves and others.
This is making me think about those times when we inevitably fall short of our own expectations. Those moments when we get caught up in negativity or react in a way that doesn't feel aligned with love. What's the best way to handle those slip-ups?
Ah, yes. The inevitable stumbles along the path. The key here is self-compassion.
Okay.
Remember, Abke emphasizes that we're not trying to fight the ego,
Right.
but rather to remember love. And that includes remembering love for ourselves when we make mistakes.
So instead of beating ourselves up for not being perfect, heart-centered beings, we can use those moments as opportunities to practice self-forgiveness and gently redirect ourselves back to love.
Exactly. Think of it like training a puppy.
Okay.
You wouldn't punish a puppy for having an accident on the rug, would you?
No.
You'd simply clean up the mess and gently guide it back to its designated potty spot.
Right.
The same goes for our own hearts. When we slip up, we can simply acknowledge it, offer ourselves some kindness, and gently redirect our attention back to love.
That's a great analogy. It takes the pressure off and makes the whole process feel much more approachable.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be days when you feel deeply connected to your heart, and there will be days when you feel like you're completely lost in the wilderness of your own mind. The key is to simply keep practicing. Keep showing up for yourself with compassion and a willingness to learn and grow.
Okay, so we've talked about practical tips for integrating heart-centered living into daily life.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious about those Psalms Abke referenced. Can we dive into those now?
Absolutely. He specifically mentions Psalms 1 and 103.
Right.
And I think these particular Psalms offer such a beautiful and poetic expression of the heart's wisdom. They speak to the deep peace, joy, and unshakable strength that come from aligning with our true nature, which is love itself.
He even read a specific quote from Psalm 1.
Yes.
His passion is to remain true to the word of I am meditating day and night on the true revelation of light.
Yes. And for me, that verse speaks to the power of immersing ourselves in the energy of love.
Okay.
It's not just about thinking about love or talking about love, but about making it our constant companion, our guiding light, our true revelation.
So it's about cultivating a deep and abiding relationship with love, like a lifelong romance.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Psalm 103 is all about the blessings that flow from that relationship with love. It speaks of forgiveness, healing, renewal, and abundance.
It's like a love letter from the divine, reminding us of our inherent worthiness and the infinite possibilities that open up when we align with love.
Exactly. And what's so powerful about these songs is that they're not just abstract concepts, they offer tangible practices for cultivating this heart-centered way of being.
Okay.
They invite us to meditate, to chant, to sing, to immerse ourselves in the language of love,
Right.
and allow it to transform us from the inside out.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. I feel like we've covered so much ground, from the science of heart-mind coherence to the practicalities of daily living to the profound wisdom embedded in these ancient texts.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right.
There's so much more to explore in this realm of heart-centered living. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a taste of what's possible when you choose to let love lead the way.
It definitely has. I'm feeling inspired and energized to continue exploring this path, and I'm so grateful for your insights and guidance.
The pleasure is all mine. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once.
Okay.
Start small. Be gentle with yourself and trust that your heart knows the way.
To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into The Heart's Way is Better.
Yes, thank you.
We hope you found something here to nourish your own journey toward greater love, peace, and fulfillment. And until next time, remember to keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep listening to the whispers of your own wise heart.